Welcome to First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, the birthplace of Congregational Humanism. We carry on that tradition of free thought today, dedicated to promoting a free search for truth, meaning, and justice. Our web address is firstunitarian.org. Thank you for joining us.
I needed to get away. Most of all, I needed a change. Desperately trying to find my way, even through all the pain. If I didn't leave when I did, I would have been wondering what could have been. Sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. I had to leave for a true desire. Open roads and sky so blue. Well, I've never seen the sun so bright. And these mountains looking like heaven's gates, and enjoying all this wild life. If I didn't leave when I did, I would have been wondering what could have been. Sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. I had to leave for a true desire. I don't know where I'm headed next, but I know I've got the universe. And I've been waiting such a long, long time to make my own path in life. I'm finally taking care of me, and I feel free, and I can breathe. Well, if I didn't leave when I did, I would have been wondering what could have been. Sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. I had to leave for a true desire. Well, I needed to get away. Most of all, I needed a change.
Thank you, Sammy. Welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis on another bright, cool, freezing Sunday together at the beginning of this new year, 2025. Welcome to each of you, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever your dreams and wishes for the year ahead, however you identify, whoever you love, whatever stories you tell, whatever's breaking your heart right now, whether present in body in this space or present with us online, know that your presence helps to create the us that is FUS. As we gather, let us attend to the need to walk humbly upon this land, the traditional land of the Dakota Oyate, and in particular of the Wapatuka tribe, who still call this place home. May we live in gratitude for the myriad ways they have stewarded this land for time immemorial, and may we express that gratitude in kind by caring for the earth and all her creatures. First Unitarian Society is a member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations. My name is Rev. Yulin Stoneberg. I'm your interim minister, here for this time to support you in turning a page in the story of your collective lives. It is good to be together and to gather as a community of seekers in this place where we commit ourselves to live out our common values, to bring justice, equity, and compassion into our daily lives, to resist all that threatens the earth and her people, and to live in ways that would bring a world community of peace and safety and justice for all into being. You know, especially at this time in our nation, it's critical that we come together to live out these values and also to invite others to join us. Next Sunday, on the eve of the inauguration, which is so ironically happening on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, we will be exploring the stories that we have just got to cling to in order to further love, justice, and the beloved community at a time when these values are under attack. It would be an especially good Sunday to invite your friends to FUS. They may be feeling the need for a place for this in their lives. This morning, we're privileged to be able to hear the stories of 3 coming-of-age women, stories of how they are living into both hope and grief as we usher in the changes of 2025. And it's my pleasure to lead today's assembly along with Mikki Morrissette, who will be moderating the discussion. And we're all supported by our guest musician, Jean Cohen. Again, welcome, Sammy. And our director of music, Mike Vosich, as well as Paul and Adele and Catherine, and as always, our Crackerjack media team. It's a pleasure indeed. Today, our Ethical Explorers program resumes after a holiday break, and we're together they are together as we speak on the second level. And as always, families are invited to use our childcare services and/or the multi-generational space in this room, which is now set up by the windows in front of the sound tech booth. We are a multi-generational community, and all ages are always welcome here in the Assembly Hall. So right now, I invite you, wherever you are, including those online, to just take a moment to greet the morning and also to greet those around you. You might want to get up and get a gray and teal songbooks if that's something you'd like to have. Well, it sure is lovely to make some connections with one another. And I invite you now to take a deep breath, to settle into this time and space and center yourselves. Today's opening words are those of Reverend Scott Taylor. We gather as a house of stories. As we learn of those who have gone before, the way in front of us becomes clearer. As we weave together our individual tales into a common story, our loneliness lessens, and the ever-present web of our oneness is revealed. As we listen deeply to each other's difficult stories with tenderness and trust, we descend into the longings and learnings, hopes and fears of the humanity that we share. Beneath the wells from which we drink, there is a deeper well that feeds them all. So come, let us tell each other tales of our thirst. Let us drink from the stories that sustain us all. So let us join now in imagining new stories of who we are and what we may become. As Paul comes to light our chalice flame, let's speak together the words on the screen which articulate our shared Unitarian Universalist value of generosity. Whoops, it's not there yet. There we go. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. Our chalice is lit, so now let's read the congregational covenant together. Love is the spirit of this place, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. So now how about we sing together? Our first song is in the Teal Songbook. It's number 1026, and the words will be on the screen. It's called If Every Woman. I invite you to rise in body and or spirit to sing.
If every woman First Unitarian Society is a congregational humanist community. We're here for each other, our neighbors, and our planet. And one manifestation of this is that of our caring team. If at any time there's something happening in your life that you'd like to share with our team or with this community, please send a note to joysandconcerns1stunitarian.org. You can also use the contact form on our website. After the assembly, you're invited to go downstairs. You would like to stop by the card basket and send a note to folks who are unable to attend the assembly and/or people we mention in Joys and Concerns. This morning, I'd like to share two concerns. Terrell Brown's sister, Barb, passed away Wednesday morning from pancreatic cancer. Both she and Terrell have a gene that makes them more susceptible to this. She was diagnosed about 6 months ago in Cairo, Egypt, where she had been living for 43 years and been staying with friends in Florida the past few months while getting treatment. Terrell reports that her death was peaceful and that she was feeling good until near the end. We hold Terrell and the whole family in our hearts at this time of loss. I also want to share that we've recently heard news that a previous member, Bill Sperber, died recently. A few folks have been in touch with his widow, Renata, and we all hold his memory and his connections at FUS in our hearts. That we may stay in touch with our own humanity, remember those who are suffering, and remind ourselves of the value of a moment of stillness. Let's take some time in our lives, in the lives of those we love, and in the lives of all beings everywhere. May all be safe, happy, and well.
star with these perfect flying wings. Roaming free like a wild horse with my heart open. Roaming free like a wild horse with my heart protected. The late fall breeze carrying me at ease. There was a time I didn't know how to love myself. A constant battle trying to always settle down. Well, I was bouncing off the walls, looking for love in all wrong places, in all the wrong ways. Roaming free like a wild horse with my heart open. Roaming free like a wild horse with my heart protected. The late fall breeze carrying me at ease. Well, I had to love myself and no one else except who I am, changing for the better. Oh, yeah. Each and every day, well, I'm growing stronger, feeling I could do anything now. Come on, roaming free like a wild horse with my heart open. Roaming free like a wild horse with my heart protected. The late fall breeze carrying me at ease. Late fall breeze carrying me at ease.
All right. Hello, everybody. Good morning. So I'm Mikki Morrissette, congregant here, but also publisher and editor of Minnesota Women's Press. And we had decided that a good theme for January would be hope and grief. We decided this before the election, but we knew there was a 50-50 chance. So what we did in this issue, and you'll see this, around the building, is we had a lot of different writers share their views on where they feel. Especially, we really wanted to capture the voices of some of the younger generations. I don't know if you consider yourself a younger generation, but from my viewpoint, you are. So what we wanted to do is, the times today are very different than they were even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, really. And so we wanted to capture a lot of those voices of where people are feeling about the state of the world. And these were 3 of the women in the issue who all had really lovely, hopeful, uplifting things to say despite where some things are. So, and that's kind of the point of everything, is we all still have each other to uplift each other, to look ahead with positivity and change. And so that's kind of what this is about. So we invited 3 of them to come to talk today a little bit about what they wrote in the issue. I'm just going to ask each of them a question based on what they've written, and then we're just going to have a little conversation. So First is Cheyenne Wilson, who is the author of We Are the Evidence, a handbook for finding your way after sexual assault. She, by the way, has brought copies of her book, which will be downstairs in the social hall after we talk today. And Cheyenne, you wrote the book because you wanted to bring together the voices of survivors, therapists, dietitians, nurses, detectives, lawyers. And you indicated that you did start to feel hopeful about the future in the process of creating a book, a resource that could help others. You've written, it's a very substantial book, 300 pages, basically, a very comprehensive guide. You wrote in the essay for Women's Press, when I talk with other survivors of sexual assault, I often remind them that healing mirrors the stages of grief because recovering from trauma is, in many ways, a grieving process. We grieve the loss of innocence, who we were before the trauma, the future we envisioned, and sometimes even friends and family who do not offer the support we need. So my question to you, Cheyenne, is it is common for many people who experience trauma, and I was one of those, to try to very quickly push through the pain or numb it. And you indicated that you were yourself in stages of denial because someone you knew assaulted you, rather than the common myth so many of us have had that it tends to be a stranger. You searched for resources to navigate the confusion and questions you experienced, and then decided to create that resource yourself. So, what advice do you have for people who are in the midst of grief related to trauma or loss and are desperately searching for a way out of it?
I want to thank you for that question, and also thank you for inviting me to be here. This is an opportunity to talk about something that is very important to me, because I did spend years denying what had happened, and that ultimately delayed my healing process and my healing journey. Because when we're grieving a trauma, it's very natural to want to run away from that. It's very natural to want to use ways to avoid dealing with it or delaying that healing journey. So I wanted to talk about how when we're stuck in the thick of trauma and grieving, it's natural to want to escape it. But healing happens when we're able to sit with the trauma and the grief and begin to process it. And a great way to start that is to educate yourself. Start looking at resources that are available. Look at the realities of trauma or grief, because it'll help you feel like you're not alone. It'll help you understand what you're going through and why you might be acting and behaving the way you are. But a big piece I also want to share is that healing happens in community. After trauma and loss, it's tempting to isolate. These feel like very isolating experiences where you're on your own, no one's there for you, no one understands what you've gone through. That's natural. I don't want anyone to feel like that's not okay. It's okay to take some time for yourself. But healing really happens in community. And so if the people around you aren't supportive at first, try finding other groups and other communities. There's so much online even. There's entire peer support groups online you can find. Think about your formal and informal supports. So your doctors, your therapists, who in your life can help support you through this. But it's also important for those in your community and those who have a loved one who's been through trauma or loss to educate yourselves as well. Not doing so can make you, without meaning to, cause more harm, as you might ask victim-blaming questions that take the blame and the shame of the trauma from the perpetrator where it belongs to the victim. So educating yourself is a really big step. And keep checking in with your loved one. It's really easy to offer help once and then not offer it again. But a lot of times when you're in that really dark spot of healing and trauma and try and navigate what to do next, it's hard to say yes when someone offers help the first time. So keep offering help. Keep inviting them to engagements, even if they've said no a couple times because they weren't ready. It means the world to them to know that they're thought of. Healing happens as a marathon. It's not a sprint, and that is for the survivor as well as those supporting them. So be present, take care of yourself, because this is a long journey and there's going to be ups and downs. But the sooner you are able to sit with your trauma and start working through it, the sooner your healing can really begin. Otherwise, that trauma just kind of festers and that grief just festers and it'll come up later and later. And this, I think, applies to everyone no matter where they're at in their trauma healing journey, because like I said, I denied it for years. And so I didn't get to really start going through and processing and healing until 3 years after my assault. And that's 3 years of my life that I can't get back. So starting that process sooner rather than later is really important. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just add, I have mentioned this to Cheyenne, but I had myself been sexually assaulted by a coworker in college, at the college newspaper. And because I enjoyed working there and didn't want it to be a thing, I pretended it was not a big deal. And I ignored it and denied it for a couple of years. Again, it was somebody I knew who apologized later, and so I thought, oh, well, then that wasn't what it was. So, but it took about 10 years before I finally got therapy for it and affected a lot of things in my 20s. So I thank you for your book and what it took to put it together. So, Melissa Vasquez, you are the Communications and Community Engagement Manager of Latino Lead. And you had written we have a tapestry section in the magazine which features the voices of a lot of different people expressing a lot of different perspectives. You said there, the future I dream of is one in which we redefine what it means to belong. It's one in which immigrant communities are empowered to build and thrive. I believe we are on the cusp of a cultural renaissance that embraces the full complexity of our identities and celebrates our presence as an integral part of this nation's fabric. And, we talk at First Unitarian Society here about the differences between seeing the world with love and fear and hope amidst the grief and the inevitable spectrum of feelings that are between those emotions. And we've also talked here about the threats of massive deportations this year. Yet your thoughts are hopeful about belonging and thriving and building and creating together and enabling people to recognize and celebrate complex identities in this country. In the work that you do, why do you see this optimism about a coming renaissance?
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Cheyenne and Mikki, for sharing your stories and your powerful words. And I appreciate this question. I hope you don't mind if I've prepared a few words in advance. It's true that we live in a time where fear can feel overwhelming. Fear of deportations, of losing rights, of seeing our communities further marginalized. But I believe that hope is not the absence of fear completely. It's what rises in response to it. My optimism about a cultural renaissance comes from the way I've seen communities like mine refuse to let fear define us. As a DACA recipient myself and the daughter of Mexican immigrants, my existence is shaped by both grief and hope. I've witnessed the pain of uncertainty and the resilience this experience demands, but through my work at Latino Lead, I've also witnessed a powerful shift. Latina leaders, advocates, and other community influencers are no longer asking for permission to exist or to belong. We are building spaces where we can thrive on our own terms, and that is the foundation of my hope. I see this renaissance in the young people who are rewriting the narrative of what it means to be American, not to do away with what currently and beautifully exists, but to further accentuate our roots and our dualities. I see it in the growing recognition that our stories are essential to this country's future. And I see it in the partnerships and solidarities across communities, which are very evident here at FUS, which remind me that our struggles are interconnected, but so are our victories. This optimism doesn't come from ignoring the grief or the challenges. It comes from embracing the complexities of our experiences. Grief tells us what we've lost, but hope tells us what's still possible. And in the Latina community, we carry both, along with a deep understanding that joy and celebration are forms of resistance in and of themselves. The Renaissance, I imagine, is one where we are not only surviving, but thriving, where our cultures are celebrated and our contributions recognized. It's fueled by the belief that our identities are not deficits, but strengths. And when I think of the future, I don't just see the obstacles ahead. I see the generations of leaders, dreamers, and change makers rising to meet them. That's why I choose to see the world with love, because love propels us to act, to build, and to create a world where we all belong. And that's what I've had to share today.
So Priscilla, Trin, and I go back years now. She's been writing with Women's Press, working, she's on our editorial board for several years. So I've always very much appreciated having her voice connected with what we're doing, and she's a big supporter, which is very helpful. You wrote a story in this issue about the solidarity economy, highlighting that you feel hopeful seeing efforts to support unhoused people at encampments, the creation of community-owned renewable energy, Native women establishing hydroponic food sovereignty, and other things. You said, quote, "All these actions indicate a cultural shift from individual efforts to community-oriented solidarity. By centering the collective and developing communal structures rooted in shared resources, we are developing a more inclusive economy with self-governance." So similar to Melissa, you see reason for optimism that we are shifting to a kind of cultural renaissance that is more collective and communal than what we have experienced for decades, probably since we started living in individual homes in an industrialized and capitalistic society. So my question to you is, how do you see this community-oriented shift happening and unfolding across urban, suburban, and rural areas?
Thank you, Mikki, for that question, and thank you for having us, really, at FUS Community. I mean, as an ex-Catholic, this is actually quite healing just to be here and experience this type of service. So I guess to answer your question, Mikki, I work in my 9-to-5 in food systems. I don't have a communications degree, but here I am being director of communications, communications manager, and this role has really provided me hope because I've always thought that STEM, which is what I love, but I'm not good at it, but the reason why you need communicators is that they can do this bridging, showing how there is progress being made, because I think sometimes a lot of our successes are kept in academic fields or in the political field, and I have a lot of hope because I'm seeing, as an immigrant daughter, as someone who has encountered SA, as someone who has multiple identities, we are seeing the pinch affect everyone. It's not the first time we've been in a recession. It's not the first time we've had socio-political unrest. But I really think along the spectrum, a lot more people are unhappy and they're more vocal about it, especially since COVID. I graduated on the tail of COVID, and coming out of that, I felt on online spaces and in leftist spaces where I occupy and spend a lot of my time, there's this unifying recognition that it's not just money, it's also social fabrics that need tending to, it's also health fabrics that need tending to. And so the narrative is shifting. I think people are making the dots and connections a bit more. And I talk to people who are right of center and try to communicate their viewpoints, and they say very similar things, just with different words. And I think that's what gives me hope, is that you see this narrative merging. People are feeling the injustice affect them. I think there have been walls of privilege that have existed for a long, long time, and now it's starting to come down a little bit. No matter what your identity is, I'm seeing people bond over struggles and bond over hope. I think I talk about deep time in my article, and of course it's normal to have reactionary movements. People will say, oh, it's gonna suck. But then you step back and you say, well, it's 4 years in the grand scheme of things. And I talk to intergenerational and have intergenerational conversations. Folks are like, oh yeah, this has been going on for 20 years, you'll be fine, you know? And so, yeah, I think folks are more open about the victories and the struggles and really having this long-term mindset, and that's what gives me hope. Because I'm in my mid-20s, and I always come back to this quote of, hope is not mine to lose. It really is something that all of us are involved in, no matter if we feel it all the time. So those are my thoughts for now.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask all of you a question that we didn't prep, and it's not an easy question to answer, but we pin our hopes on the young, so I'm going to throw this to you. So, one of this long series that we're doing with Women's Press Online is called Collective Health, and that's exactly what all of you are talking about. It's this idea of becoming much more communal rather than relying on individuals to heal themselves, being able to tap into the collective power around mental health and housing needs, related to gender-based violence and assault, related to the way we run our economies and our ecosystems, and being able to turn that tide so that we're less, again, isolated in our spaces, protective in our spaces, and get a better sense of collectiveness and that we're all in this together. But we also know that that's not been an easy transition for people to make, that there's still sort of a cultish desire to feel like this person's gonna fix everything. This spirit sometimes will lead the way. And I am wondering if each of you can just try to talk about in the people that you've connected with and the fact that there is fear and grief in a lot of ways, but what is it that you think has prevented us from being able to be as communal as all of you are talking about? What's getting in the way? What are the obstacles that we have to deal with? An impossible question to answer, I recognize, but I am just curious to see what each of you has to say about what's blocking so many people from getting a better sense of the fact that we are all interconnected. And then Priscilla, if you want to start, and then we'll just hand the mic down. Thank you.
Happy to start. This is the Friday night conversations I have with my friends. I always come back to this. I think it has to do with our cultural psychology. We talked about healing today, and I think the healing process starts individually and then it ripples out to the community. We don't have, in our public education system, at least the one that I experienced, space to talk about mental health, to talk about how patriarchy affects all of us, not just women, men, everyone. And this healing needs to happen first before we can even tackle the greater challenges of our time. Because having the language to connect to each other as humans, having the emotional maturity to hold space for someone that's different, that's not something that was taught in school to me. That is something I was taught through organizing, through being in community with people who did not look like me. And so this deep psychological, cultural undoing, I think, is necessary before we step into working together. And safety. Everyone just wants to feel safe. Folks are afraid of change because they're afraid of uncertainty. And so when you have that safety net, I think that really paves the way for cooperation and collaboration that is healthy. I mean, it's not perfect, but at least you have the tools, the facilitation, the governance, skill sets to navigate those challenges together. And I see that a lot with my brother, who's only 2 years younger than me, and most days I feel like his mom, but I know I'm his older sister, and it's great to see this changing way of friendship. Friendship, I think, is a great thing. Camaraderie comes out of friendships, and my brother, he's always like, ugh, am I gay for talking about my feelings? I'm like, no. So I think it's like a lot of undoing, a lot of unlearning, but I think that's really that individual deep conditioning. Once we undo a bit of that, then it unravels to something much more beautiful and messy and tangled, but at least you're not doing it by yourself.
And yeah, go ahead, Melissa. I'll just interject. My son, who was home for the holidays, had a New Year's Eve party with a lot of his buddies from high school days. And yeah, the the conversations that they were having, the kind of party it was, for one thing, so different from when I was that age. And I was, they're remarkable young men, and it's been great to see that those kinds of friendships are out there. And again, we hope we have more of that support for each other, for men that are talking about feelings, for men that are talking about respect, and we do need a lot more of that too. Not to just pin it all on the men. Sorry.
Yeah, I'd just like to extend a eldest sibling fist bump to you. I'm in the same boat with you here. But in this sense, I think that biculturalism and multiculturalism in general is a superpower, because just innately you're used to shifting from community to community and just code switch in that way. And becoming accustomed to speaking with and learning from different communities. And I think that's how bridges are established and kept. So I think it's, at least among my peers, it's not just about establishing those bridges, but also learning how to maintain them and reaching across several divides that exist, right? And I think there's a different kind of class consciousness that comes out of that. And I celebrate it every time that I encounter it. Not because of its absence in older generations, but I think we have to keep riding this momentum. Yeah.
Thank you. And then Cheyenne, what thoughts do you have to share?
I think it continues building off what you both have already said, is we have to help people see the value in community. And I think, again, trauma, grief, healing all seems like it needs to be so isolated. But that's where sharing our stories and raising awareness really comes into play, because when you think, oh, I don't need to worry about that type of trauma because I'm a man, I'm this population, you don't think you need to care about it. But then when you learn the realities of sexual assault, as the example, you realize that there are people in your life who have been impacted, and maybe you've been impacted, but you've denied it because you bought into myths about the realities of, or the stigmas that we hear about different traumas. So raising awareness in general, I think, is going to help bridge those gaps, and I think that applies for cities and rural areas, because we need to get the information out there to everyone, and that's a really great way to start building more of a community feel when you get buy-in from everyone that there's a reason to care about this issue. When people feel they don't have a reason to care, they're not going to get as involved.
Well, I want to just thank all three of you for making the trip in today for this. And we're going to step down.
Wow, thank you so much. It's so great to have you here. I really appreciate it. This song is a great follow-up for those conversations. First, I'm going to tell you a little story. Glenn Thomas Rideout, who is the director of music at First Universalist here in Minneapolis, has told a story about singing this song, There Is More Love Somewhere, during a general assembly where he was leading worship. And afterwards, he was approached by a woman who held his hands as if they had known each other for a really long time. And she looked into his eyes and she said, "Do you know what? I always sing that song, There Is More Love Right Here. I don't understand why it's that why we don't sing it that way all the time. We have already found this community of love, so there's more love right here." This was her truth. And Dr. Rideout felt compelled to respond to her, who he had just met, thanking her for bringing forward that question. And then he explained to her why he thought it was necessary, particularly with the music of people of color, that we enter and examine these songs with more curiosity than colonization. He thanked her. He explained that for those of us who live with the privilege of knowing love, it can be difficult to understand the perspective of one who lives without such a privilege. And explained that it can be difficult to understand the lived experience of those who have trouble finding the evidence of love in their immediate vicinity, whether that be in their church or their neighborhood or in their city or even on the planet. And he thanked her again and explained for some who don't share the privilege of perceiving love right here, that moving toward that idea of privilege had become a vital practice of Black faith. And then he offered that if we, as a community of Unitarian Universalists, populated by well-meaning people, are to mean anything to the lives and the deaths of people of color, we must begin by learning and not squelching the forms of expression that arise from their lived perspectives. And she responded, "Thank you. I never heard it expressed that way. I never understood it that way. I will never sing it that same way again." And so I wonder if we too can sing in that way, to understand it in that way as we sing, with a mixture of that hope and grief. So please rise in body and or spirit, for there is more love sung somewhere. It's number 95 in the Grace Songbook.
First, I just want to thank Mikki and Cheyenne and Melissa and Priscilla. You are fabulous. You give me hope. Hi, everyone. I'm Catherine Jordan, daughter of longtime members Ross and Phyllis Jordan. I arrived at FUS 70 years ago. I know. It's possible. In 1954, to attend nursery school. I remember the sandbox located down the hall on the first floor. Over the years, I enjoyed Barbara Pete's original mural of birds and animals and butterflies in now what is the non-gendered bathroom. We read morality stories about Martin and Judy, the Joseph and Mary of the UU crowd. And I participated in a nativity play under Carl Storm's watch right here. In junior high, we had a full year of visiting area denominations to scope out how other religions operated, kind of like an Amish Rumspringa rite of passage to test our liberal theology. I was documented by the Star Tribune wearing an Indian sari to trick or treat for UNICEF at an FUS Halloween party. My uncle Les Blacklock cut and meticulously decorated the annual 20-high-foot Christmas solstice tree right here. Every tinsel was independently delivered. My father was chair of the FUS board during Bob Lehman's tenure. Both parents sung in the choir. My aunt Fran Blacklock conducted the Troubadour Children's Choir. Steve and I had our last fling ball here before our wedding. And our family celebrated the lives of our parents, brother, aunt, and uncle with pageantry here. And I had an early kiss in the secret stairway behind the stage. But the most influential part of my early association with FUS was being a member of the Teenage Chanting Club, which was part of the network of LRY, liberal, religious, or rebellious youth groups that were across the country. We participated in the North Star Federation of UU churches, designing and managing our own youth conferences for 100 to 200 youth at area camps or Unistar 2 or 3 times a year. That meant developing conference themes and content, recruiting speakers, registering participants, managing budgets, finding adult chaperones. You can ask me about the Purity Patrol. Creating worship services, cooking meals, and making lifelong friends across the region. My organizing and leadership skills were developed in the crucible of LRY. It's where I learned about Antioch College, where I continued my experiential education. I am forever in LRY's debt. Most recently, I've had a hand in starting FUS's mental health awareness team, its climate action team, and Earth Day celebrations. I've served on the finance committee, and I'm currently a member of the foundation board. I helped to initiate the UU Ukraine assistance team to raise funds and support 4 families in the Twin Cities. I'm one of the few kids, FUS kids, who you will meet, who have continued to be a member of this congregation, who also include Wendy Jerome, Edward Leaf, Christy Eller, and Ann Walker Langard. There may be others I've forgotten. We might want to investigate why folks drop away and why some of us stayed by finding a replacement for religious guilt. For me, FUS provides a deep connection to my past, a place where my values and history are grounded, a community that is willing to stand up and step up to make a difference, and a place that celebrates the creative spirit. I thank you for providing me with a spiritual home. First Unitarian Society is a free, independent, and self-governing humanist community. As members and friends of this community, we share the gifts of our time and energy, our creativity, our imagination and vision, our talents, our skills, and our treasure. Your financial support is an important element in turning our shared vision into reality. In this new year, we are reviving the practice of taking a collection every week during Sunday assembly. As the baskets are passed, you are invited to give generously and joyfully as you are willing and able. You can also use the QR code on the screen, which will take you to our online giving form. You can also drop by the office or mail in your donation. And please feel free to reach out to us with any questions about giving to First Unitarian Society. Thank you.
Teamwork. It takes a community, right? It's not in our collective practice yet. Think about the basket. So this will help today to remind us in future weeks. So I have more than a few announcements, so I ask your patience and your ears. As shared earlier, OWL and Ethical Explorers are back up and running alongside our ever-present childcare program and the multi-generational space here. Other upcoming family and educational programming opportunities include all ages volunteering at Plymouth Church's second Sunday dinners today at 4 p.m. and also our monthly child and family dinners at 5 p.m. and the next one is on next Sunday at 5 p.m. And if you're interested in helping make FUS and our greater world a more inclusive space, please join in the family programming event with Out Front, who will be here from 5 to 6:30 on February 1st for the first in a series of training in a quarterly series on LGBTQ plus equity. So that'll begin with appetizers at 4:30 outside the Chalice Room. And these trainings are set up and they're meant to be inclusive and appropriate for all ages, and childcare will be provided. Then this coming Saturday, January 18th, join Humanists MN to commemorate National Religious Freedom Day. That'll be right here in this hall at 2 p.m. There'll be a forum to explore the true meaning of religious freedom. And the keynote speaker is Rachel Lazar, President and CEO of Americans United for Separation of Church and State in Washington, D.C. And she'll be joined by local panelists, including Representatives Mike Freiberg and Esther Agbaje, Jess Braverman of Gender Justice, and Lutheran minister, author, and Minnesota Star Tribune columnist, Angela Denker. And after the program, there'll be a reception downstairs, and registration is encouraged, and you can go to the Friday email for details. And also happening next Saturday, the 18th, is the People's March, and you use our gathering to stand for justice and equity on Cathedral Hill. And again, there's more information in the Friday update. We'll be joining Moose Jaw, which is Minnesota UU Social Justice Alliance, thank you, to march at the Capitol and rally from 12:30 to 1:30. If you're interested in carpooling or taking public transportation together, contact me and I'll try to put a list together so people can connect for that. Then, plan to attend our first FUS History Smash next Sunday, January 19th. It's about the early decades, activism in the Gilded Age from 1870 to 1910. And a post-assembly discussion will be held in the Chalice Room. And if you think you want to attend that by Zoom, email the office, Bethany, to request the link. Now, after assembly today, for those in the building and for those of you not in the building, I hope you'll find your own mini meal somewhere. But please join us downstairs for conversation and a meal. We invite you to make a free will donation for the meal as you're able. Normally, that donation for our mini meal goes towards our own grocery costs, but today it goes to the second Sunday dinner at Plymouth Congregational Church. You'll see several ways to give as you approach the buffet, and you can also donate now via the QR code that was on the screen earlier. You might see it again in a moment. There, you can use the drop-down list and choose the second Sunday meal. These Sunday evening community meals are held weekly, and they're free to all and are provided by member congregations of Align Minneapolis. And our First Unitarian Kitchen and volunteers prepare this meal on the second Sunday every month. So the mini meal itself today is composed of compassion, simplicity, and generosity, and some other actual food. Today we'll eat simply so that others might simply eat. Then, after the mini meal, there's more to take part in. You might join the Trans Welcome team downstairs during the mini meal to make snack bags for students at Minneapolis Community and Technical College. And everyone is invited to join the seasonal celebrations team in the Chalice Room after the mini meal for a conversation seeking feedback on the winter solstice celebrations and ideas for planning future events, because they really want to hear from everybody. And I'm going to stop there and just say that there's always a lot going on. Check the Friday update for lots more information. If you don't get the Friday update and you'd like to get it, stop by the office and we'll get you on that list. So let's wrap up our time together in this space. Paul's coming to extinguish our chalice, and I invite you to join me in speaking the words on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. All of these we carry in our hearts and in our minds until we are together again.
Thank you for having me today on this beautiful Sunday. I've painted walls and my mind is full. The weeds are high and my battery's low. Give me something to slow me down, to ease the pain, to feel less drained. Oh, 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 You couldn't pin me on a map, put me in a box, or drag me down. I've had to learn to read the room, stay away from you to protect myself. My clothes still sit in baskets after weeks of my brain unraveling. My hands climb over mountains. I'm still learning grace, love, and patience. Oh, 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 Well, I don't wanna be perfect. Why do I care what people think? I just wanna be free, let go and breathe. Let go. Let go. Let go and heal.
got my words, so I'm getting it together. So today's closing words actually come from the end of Priscilla's essay in the magazine, in the words of Samira the Sapphic Siren, a poet, an online educator. She says, they say, mutual aid is not rooted in generosity, it's rooted in community. I don't like it when people see community building as selfless. Building community is necessary for both of us. It's crucial to your survival today, and it might be crucial to my survival another day. So may we leave our shared space here today with the intention to build community that serves us all. Thank you.